Hey team, Will Cobb here, and I'm here to help you develop 35mm film and 120 film at home. You can do this on your own and it's pretty awesome. I got into it and I absolutely love doing it. And this video is gonna be a full, all-encompassing video of all the details you need to know of how to do it yourself. Now this video is going to be a longer video, but I'm gonna break it up into smaller sections in separate videos. If you wanna just get the nitty-gritty out of the way, you can go over and watch those videos as well. This video is gonna be super detailed about my kit that I use, the prices, the costs of why you would develop and scan at home, and tips and tricks on how to get the best results out of it, and some bonus tips about how to take care of your chemicals and get a really good image out of your developing process. All the items in this video are gonna be listed down below. Anything you order from that list helps me out a little bit and I really appreciate it. I'm not sponsored by any of the products we're about to talk about, but I do stand by the ones I purchased. I did a lot of research on it. This video is also gonna be covering things that I never knew about when I got started. I scoured the internet to learn different details about this, and I found people with YouTube videos of like a guy in his bathroom, a really quick and nitty-gritty video that just kind of looked nice, but didn't tell me all the details I wanted to know. That's why I'm making this, to help you know all those little details and do a really good job developing at home. So developing film at home is pretty easy, but you're gonna need a few things to get started. I've built a kit that I've listed down below. You can also buy fully fledged, already made kits from Distilled.com and a few other places that I can also link down below. Those kits are really great, but I think that you can find more useful things elsewhere for about the same price or less. So I built my kit like this. Let's talk about it. The first thing that we have is a bucket. Nice simple bucket, pretty easy to get, and it holds everything, and I store this under my sink. We have these accordion chemical bottles to store my chemicals in, 3 steps of chemicals. This one is from AP, and they've discontinued this one, but they make the same bottle from Still on their website, and a few websites still hold it. Maybe B&H still has it, I think. You can find these for about 10 bucks. What they do is they can collapse and keep the air out of your chemicals, and we'll talk about that during our chemical care. But it's really important to have a black bottle to keep the light out. It's really important that you get the air out, and that's what this does. And it's important that you have a good seal. This one didn't come with that good of a seal, so I used this tape around the side of it. We have our sous vide here. I got this one for 40 bucks on Amazon. One of the big things I was looking for in a sous vide was temperature control, which is extremely important for nailing our 102 degree temperature that we're looking for. And I wanted it to be cheap because sous vides, for some reason, cost about 100 bucks normally. So I found this one. It's the cheapest with good control that I've found. It's the AUAG sous vide. It's on Amazon. I'll link it below. You're gonna need your Patterson tank. There's several different types of tanks on the market. I really like the Patterson tank. It works really well. I like the construction. I like the trust and the reviews I've read about it. This Patterson tank is the 500 milliliter version, so half a liter. It is a kit. This kit comes with 2 reels. You can have either 2 rolls of 35 millimeter or expand it for 1 reel of 120. One of the cool things about this tank and a lot of the other tanks is that you can load it in the dark. Once this top part is on, then you can add your chemicals in daylight and develop it without having to be in darkness. Patterson tanks run about 32 bucks. You can find them cheaper and more expensive some places, but they're around $32. They have different models of the Patterson tank that go up in size, and they have one that's even for 1 reel too. I like the 2 reel. I think I would go up in size because I've been shooting a lot recently, but for a simple shooter, I definitely recommend this one because it comes with those 2 reels. You're gonna need a dark bag or a completely enclosed black room. You're gonna need something like this that has 2 layers of light protection to get your hands in there and do everything in the dark because you can't open your film in the light. You're gonna need gloves. These chemicals are toxic for your skin, for intaking. You don't wanna rub your eyes or you don't wanna ingest. So wear gloves, do it, safety first. In this kit, you're also going to need a set of really nice scissors to get a good clean edge on the cuts of your film when you're done developing. You're gonna need distilled water because you don't wanna use your tap water for your chemicals, so definitely pick that up from the store. Obviously you need chemicals. Today we're gonna use the Still C41 powder kit. You are gonna need a beaker for measuring your chemicals out when you first make it and for adding water, and we'll show that a little later too. You can get a beaker from anywhere. They're about 10 bucks or less. You're gonna need funnels. I use 2 of them so that I don't contaminate each one of my chemicals. They're easy to find everywhere, 2 bucks. You're gonna need a thermometer or some way to measure your temperature. I'm actually using a mouth thermometer because I broke my actual thermometer. So just salvage one from wherever you can. If you don't have one, I have one listed below. You can get these basic metal clips on Amazon for about 13 bucks for 18. I got a ton of them. I use them for chips and I use them for developing film. Sharpie, obviously, you need to document how many rolls you've put through. You're gonna need to salvage yourself a stir stick. I stole this one from my wife's cooking stuff. Stir it on up. And something to hold your film when you're done. One of my favorite new little tricks is using this film leader retriever. This one's from Matin. It's a really cool device for retrieving the film from inside of your 35mm canister, and it keeps the canister intact, which eventually I plan to make my own film and re-roll back into those canisters. So that's why I'm doing that. It also helps, it's a really easy way to load it onto the reel, and I'll show that later. You can pick up this retriever for 14 bucks on Amazon. Photo Flow, the magic of Photo Flow. This little bottle is awesome. You only need a little splash with some distilled water. The directions don't say to use this in any of the chemicals that I've used, but this is an awesome tip for rinsing your film at the end. I think Photo Flow you can get most places for about 8 bucks. So why do I develop my own film at home? It was a big discussion when I was trying to get into film, was that this is really expensive. When you go to the lab to get your film developed, it can be anywhere from $10 to $15 just to get it developed. But to get it developed and scanned, it was $15 to $20, sometimes even more than that just to get it developed. And my local lab doesn't even develop 120 film. So I was like, why? Just why? So many wedding film photographers are using 120 film, so my local lab doesn't do it, and probably yours doesn't either, so you've got to ship your film out. Once you ship your film out, now you're having to pay shipping, so you need to get your film developed, scanned, and you need to ship it there and back to your facility, or your facility might do online transfer, but then that online transfer back to you, sometimes they charge for as well. So this could be a very expensive hobby for you, which is why I personally develop at home. I did the math on this, and for the amount of money I bought all my stuff for, including my used scanner, which I will talk about in another video, I got all my stuff for around $200 to $300, which I calculated to be about 15 rolls of film. Which that's crazy. I've already passed 15 rolls of film developed at my house, which means I have paid off my equipment, and now I just need to keep paying for chemicals and the time it takes to develop. And then that chemical breakdown comes down to about $1 per roll, rather than 15, 20 plus. Another reason I chose to develop my own film is to control the whole process. Now I know labs have the machines and they have really nice scanners and you can get really good quality from a lab, but not all labs are the same. Some labs, like my local lab, when I gave them a 35mm roll, there was inconsistencies in the film, and they also gave me a flat scan without telling me. You can work with your labs to get the appropriate color profile developed for your film or for your shooting style. Sometimes it takes a lot of back and forth, sometimes it takes a lot of imperfections and hammering that out. I think wedding photographers should try to find a lab that they trust. I personally haven't found one yet. I'm gonna be making a video about trying out a bunch of different labs so I can find that for myself. But definitely it's a hard thing to find and something to consider when you're shooting film. So when I'm able to develop at home, I'm able to control the developing process. I'm also able to control the scanning process, which again, I'll get to scanning in another video. There's 2 pros and 2 cons to developing at home. The 2 pros are cost and control. The 2 cons are time and space. The con of time is that it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get one tank completely done developing and hung up to dry. But it also takes a little bit of time to heat up your chemicals and then time to pack up and clean up your stuff. So there is time involved, not to mention the time it takes for you to scan. There's a lot of different ways that you can scan, but scanning does take some time as well. So in a time scenario, sending off your film for a lab to do, that's pretty easy. to not have to take any time there. So essentially you're paying the lab to save you time. The other con is space. I have to clear off my entire table to kind of have all the things I need right in front of me. And you also need to be able to get to the bathroom or get to a sink and be dumping some stuff. So it does kind of take some space, but I have a tiny apartment and it works really well for me. So take that con as you will. Okay, let's start heating up our distilled water and getting our chemicals ready to go for developing. To use this sous vide, I'm gonna hit the power button. I'm gonna change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit because we in America. I'm gonna hold down the temperature gauge and set it to 130 degrees. And then just let it go. It's gonna take a little bit of while for the water in this tank to heat this water. So making the chemicals for the first time does take a little bit of time, and that won't be an every time you develop your film thing. Once you make your chemicals, then you'll have that for 20, 30, sometimes even 40 rolls. So let's wait for that to heat up. Let's go ahead and open up the C41 kit. So in the Distilled C41 kit, we're gonna find our developer and a bleach and fix part A and part B. We're gonna be mixing these two together in the second bottle. Now for using the Distilled C41 kit, there's no stabilizer involved because they say in their manual that most modern emulsions, which is the actual film that we're gonna be working with, has a stabilizer built in to preserve the film. Some of the older films don't have that, so having a stabilizer really helps. The Unicolor kit does come with a stabilizer in the bag, and I really liked that. I wish this one came with that. So that stabilizer is what our third bottle is for. We won't be using that in this video, but if you do buy the Unicolor kit, which I do like that kit as well, that's what the third bottle would be for. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, developing film, we really just follow what the manual says, but I have done a lot of research on the manual and other tips and tricks. So the next parts of this video is really just gonna be following this manual and mixing these chemicals according to what they say. Nailing what they say is important. You really wanna get your temperatures correct and make sure you're completely dissolving the powders within the bottles before you start working. Our water is hot enough, let's get it mixed into our chemicals. First, we're gonna make our developer. And again, we're gonna be following the directions, so if you wanna just read the directions to make your chemicals, go ahead and do that, or follow along with me here. Both Distilled and Unicolor are pretty much the same on making their chemicals, so it's a pretty easy process. Let's do it. First step is gonna take my water. Ooh, I'm gonna fill my beaker up to 600 milliliters. Okay, I'm gonna grab my stir, my chemicals. Actually, wait, stop right there. We're dealing with chemicals. Need to teach good practices and glove up before we do this. All right, now I'm gonna stir. Now it says to top it off, you wanna go all the way up to 1,000 milliliters. It's at perfectly at 1,000. I want to stir it just a little bit more. Make sure it is completely dissolved. All right, that's nice and stirred. I'm going to take a funnel, transfer the developer over to it. I'm going to squeeze down the bottle until it's just right at the top there. I'm going to take my cap, close it. It compresses the bottle. Always label right after you make it, because you do not want to mix it up. You also don't want to mix up these caps because contaminating the developer is a great way to jack up your developer. So let's put a label on there. I'm gonna write dev. Okay, there's our developer, but wait, we do not want to move right over to the next step without cleaning our supplies. So I'm gonna run to the sink, rinse these off, make sure they're nice and clean before we start the next one. We don't want to cross-contaminate, especially on the start of a brand new batch. Okay, our supplies are clean. Now let's make the Blix. This one's a similar start. We're gonna start with 600 milliliters. All right, so now we're gonna take our part A while stirring, which I should have done this while stirring on the first one. While stirring, we're gonna add this part A in. Now, this one does smell. Try to do this in a ventilated area. Now this one's a little bit different of a process. There's gonna be a reaction happening when we combine these two, and they want that to happen inside of your bottle. So we stir this, and don't add water this time. Our container here. Now we're gonna add part B. I'm gonna wait 5 minutes for part B to react with part A. Okay, we've waited 5 minutes. Now we're gonna pour it back and forth between the two bottles a few times and then top it off in the beaker to 1,000 and put it back in the bottle. Okay, I'm gonna top it off with a little more water all the way up to 1,000. Okay, and just like with the developer, we're going to push the accordion down, get the liquid to the top. We're gonna put our cap on while pushing down. And we're gonna label this, Blix for Bleach Fix. Okay, again, we would do this one more time with making a stabilizer if we were using the Unicolor kit, but for this kit, we won't be doing that. So we just have these two chemicals. That's gonna be it for making our chemicals. Before I put the chemicals back in the hot water bath to heat up to 102, I'm actually gonna let air back into the bottles and stretch out the accordion so that it's back to its normal size. So there is air in there. We're not storing them right now, but that extra air is gonna keep the bottles buoyant in the water and so that they don't tip over. If you buy the Cine-Still kit, it does have a little attachment to its sous vide that goes in these rungs and keeps them from falling over. But my kit, you just have to add a little air to them and that will keep them from toppling over. So our hot water was at 130, so we actually need to bring that back down to 102. Now that photo flow solution that I was talking about requires you to use distilled water in a jug. I just have an old jug of distilled water, 1 milliliter of photo flow to 200 milliliters of distilled water. And you can do that with a kitchen scale or with your beaker and just fill up a jug so that you have a good amount of it. Now the chemicals are reusable, but for that last cleaning stage, I don't reuse that chemical. That's that last crisp cleaning one. So that's gonna be an unreusable one-time use thing. And it's okay to leave this at room temperature. We're not gonna use it as a heated chemical. So go ahead and make that, put that to the side. We're gonna use that later, and we're actually done with our distilled water. So we can put that away too. Okay, while we're waiting for our chemicals to heat up, you want that going while you load your rolls onto the reels. Okay, I'm gonna show you how to load 120 film and 35 millimeter film onto the reels, and I'm gonna do that in the daylight. Now, you're supposed to do this in the bag, and that's what's gonna happen in reality, but I want you to see what we're doing outside of the bag. What you should really do is use a test roll to practice this skill. Now, if you don't have a test roll, you're gonna have to take apart a roll and practice with this. It's very important to practice and know what you're doing before you use the bag. You could try to risk it, but you could ruin that first roll. I'm gonna show you how to roll on a 35 millimeter film onto one of the Patterson tank reels in the daylight. And I'm gonna show you two methods. The first method is destructive. I only recommend this one if you don't wanna get the film leader retriever. You're gonna take a can opener and you're gonna pry open around, just like you would a can, around the bottom of the canister. And you have to do this in the dark, so you need to practice this. This piece pops out and completely off. You set that little part to the side. You'll push the top part down and the entire roll will slide out. Now, when it slides out, it will unfurl on itself. So you want to kind of keep your thumbs near it to keep it from unfurling. This one I've already cut completely. Now you don't want to get your grubby fingers and put big thumbprints right on it. So you want to kind of manage it around the sides. And so while we're loading, there's going to be a leader on the end of your film. Now, it's easier to have scissors in your bag and cut that leader off in the dark. So you'll feel for the smaller leader, try to feel around with your fingers and cut that off, because that goes a lot easier onto the Patterson tank. What you need to do is, in the dark, you're gonna have this guy. Through this ratcheting motion is how it goes on. It has a little ball on both sides, and that's what catches the ends of this. We need to find the tip of our film. We're gonna put it in those holes. I use my thumbs right here to feel that ledge and feed it through. And we wanna feed it through until we hit those little metal balls. And once it hits those metal balls, we're gonna use our thumbs on both sides and try to use our fingers to keep the spool that's inside from unraveling more. And it's kind of a ratcheting motion, just like this, using our thumbs to keep it guided. And it should go all the way on there. Where you hit the end of your reel, and you're gonna take your scissors in the dark and cut that off. So that was the first method to just pry this open. The second method is not as destructive and my favorite method. So we're gonna use our film leader retriever. And this thing's a little finicky, but it is awesome. Start it with all the way down and your film all the way empty. So we're gonna shove all three. There's three little sections here. There's the A section, there's the B section, which is this under part, and then there's this little lip. We'll start it with it all down together. We're gonna shove it all in there. So all three parts are in there right now. And then we're gonna twist this until we hear an audible click. We're gonna go a good bit past that. All right, we're gonna push the first one, which is the A. This one doesn't have those letters labeled, but most of them say A. Now here's the one where that actually matters with the click. We're gonna twist this counterclockwise until we hear a click. I heard the click, and just go a little bit past the click, just a little bit past. We'll push in the last layer and then hold on to this and pull this out, and it should work. Perfect. Okay, now that we have this out, in daylight, we can pull this out a little bit. We're gonna cut the leader, and we can go ahead. We can pull out a little bit of this and put it on and get it started. And now it's ready to go. You've already exposed this when you loaded the film, and probably a little bit more. So what you'll do is you'll put this in the bag, and this is the easiest method I found, and just ratchet it on. When you hit the end, cut off that last little bit, and we're gonna load it into the tank. Easy. Once you've loaded your film in the dark onto your roll, you can either load 1 or 2. You're gonna put it on the center column, and this is all in the dark, remember. You're gonna load it into the reel with the butt part down. You're gonna take your cap, you're gonna put that on until it locks. And this is light sealed. You don't have to put the lid or the agitator on it. That's all you need, and then you're done in the dark. It's pretty easy for 35 millimeter. Then you can start adding your chemicals, and we'll get to that spot in a second. Okay, for developing 120 film, we're going to need to load our 120 film onto our Patterson tank. So let's pull out one of the reels, and when you expand it, you can only use one. So put one reel to the side, take it off, and we're gonna expand it. You do this by twisting and going over to the very end, and that makes a bigger rung. I actually have not seen many videos on loading 120 film. There's not a lot of good videos out there. There's just a few. I think I'm gonna have to show you guys by ruining a roll. So I'm very sad about this. I'm gonna have to ruin a roll of Portra 400. It's gonna be sad. Okay, here we go. So in the dark, we have this backing paper. Now, the first time I ever did this, and again, there wasn't that many videos on this, was that this backing paper, I was unrolling it and I thought the backing paper was it, and I was trying to roll the backing paper on there, and the backing paper flexes a lot more than the film. So while you're in the dark feeling for the film, that is what you're gonna need to feel for. I take off the paper that's on there, and I'm gonna start unrolling this. While it's unrolling, I'm gonna let this curl into itself, just like that. And I'm gonna put my thumb right here and right here while I'm unrolling, so I can receive the film when it comes out right here. This rolling is keeping me from getting confused in the dark. See how I'm like feeling around with my fingers? That's really important. Okay, and look, there's the film. This is a lot harder material than the backing paper. The film is also really curled. So what I'm gonna do is in the dark, I'm gonna bend this back. I'm gonna grab onto the edge. Your shot did not reach this far, so it's okay to get your thumbs on there and bend this back. It's gonna help you load that roll of film really well. In the dark, we're gonna have our extended Patterson roll. We're gonna have our tank, our center column, and we're gonna have our top And we don't need any scissors or anything else for this. We just need this. And it's got a piece of tape on the other side. Unlike 35, there's not gonna be grooves for the little metal balls to grab onto. It will still grab onto it, but it does not grab onto it as well. With this in our hand and we can kind of feel this edge and we bent it back, we need to use our thumb, find that edge right before the ball. So you'll feel the ball and then feel this edge. Line up the two edges. Now I've seen some people put a card in there that's the same size. I think that's a good idea too. But once you get this going and on the ball, then you can unroll it in the dark. You kind of use your pinkies on the bottom here to kind of keep that level, and then you're gonna ratchet it like this. Just like with 35, this is gonna bounce around a little bit, but you just keep going. It's gonna go around. It might unravel like that. There it is. So there's a piece of tape right there. You're gonna pull it and use your thumb to feel that piece of tape and peel the film off of the tape. You don't want that tape in there. It's gonna change the chemistry. See how I pulled the tape completely off? I used the edge there. All right, there's a little bit more, so I'm gonna keep going. And now it's all the way on. I could stop right there if I wanted to. Now we've got to put it back on the center column, and this part is the bottom. We make sure we put that down, and you must put this back on. Lock it. It's good to go to take out and add your chemicals in daylight. While your chemicals are in the heat bath warming up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, we're gonna go ahead and load our film. So we've already used our film leader retriever to pull out a little bit of the ream, and we can go ahead and start loading it onto the reel. You're not gonna need the lid or the agitator. We can go ahead and get it started. You need the top, center column, scissors, and if you didn't use the film leader retriever, you can use your can opener in the bag. So we're gonna take our bag, we're gonna open it up, undo the Velcro, undo the zipper, and don't forget your scissors for the last step. We're gonna zip this up and lay it out neatly on your table so that you can easily know where things are inside of there. Your arm through, and in the dark, I'm going to load on my film. There it is, and I'm ready to come on out. We're done with the bag. You can set that to the side. And this is light tight, all in here. So let's start developing. Remember to glove up. Okay, our temperatures are ready on our chemicals and we're ready to develop. So we've got our film in our tank, we have our agitator, we have our 2 funnels, our beaker for adding some water, and our lid, we'll need that as well. I've got my phone to the side here and I'm gonna be keeping track of time. I've also got some paper towels nearby to clean up any little excess drippage that might happen. First, I'm gonna warm up the tank and give a first rinse with about 500 milliliters of hot water. I'm gonna grab my water from the tank because this is already 102 degrees. I'm gonna pour it in here for 1 minute. Let's get started developing. And that's all we need the beaker for. We can set the beaker to the side. Okay, we're getting close to 1 minute. I'm gonna go ahead and dump this in the sink. Okay, that's been dumped in the sink and we're ready to get started. We're gonna start first with the developer. We're gonna add the developer for 3.5 minutes. Pour it straight in there. We're gonna agitate for the first 10 seconds. Okay, that's about 10 seconds. We're gonna put the cap on. Make sure this cap is on there really secure because it does spill. And we're gonna do complete inversion cycles. 1, 2, and twist a little bit. 3, 4. We're gonna do that every 30 seconds until we reach 3.5 minutes. You don't wanna be shaking the canister too much. You don't wanna over agitate. This is just a inverted agitation that you wanna make sure that the liquid is flowing through the film and on top and below the film. You wanna make sure it's completely covered. That's what we're doing here. Sometimes I wanna hold it upside down a little bit longer just to make sure the liquid gets past. Okay, we're not gonna rotate it again. We're gonna pour it in on this next one. I like to use my paper towel when I open it because sometimes there's a little gas that escapes. I'm gonna pull the top off. I like to rinse this top before I use it again. And we're at 3.5, so let's dump. Grab our Blix, stop our timer, reset it. Agitate for the first couple seconds here. Wipe off my table because I am messy. Make sure the lid is completely on. And then start my inversion cycles. We're gonna be doing this one for 8 minutes. Sometimes I like to release the gas a little bit just to make it easier because it likes to pop out on me. And this is why we wear gloves. It dripped a little bit. It dripped on my phone too. Now, another way that Cine-Still and Unicolor are different from each other is that the Unicolor is only 6.5 minutes of the Blix time, and it looks like the Cine-Still is about 8 minutes of the Blix time. We're coming up on 8 minutes, and I wanna warm up some water in my sink and get that ready to go, and make sure that the faucet is running warm water, not hot, but warm, so that we can rinse this out for 3 minutes after we're done. Okay, we won't be doing it any more times. And when we hit 8 minutes, we're gonna pour it back into our canister. Always make sure we're putting the right cap back on. Okay, and we're gonna go right away to the sink and start rinsing. Once we finish with the Blix step, your film is actually light sensitive now, so you can take off the cap while you're doing your rinse. After I've rinsed for 3 minutes or 7 dumps, this is when I add the photo flow at the very end to pour that in, swirl it around, and I pour it out into the sink, and I'm ready to hang it up to dry. So take your clothes hanger, add some clips to it, and we'll use those for weight, so if we hang one on here, the other one will help balance it. Okay, let's talk about chemical care. I don't see this one talked about very much in videos, but it's really important. Chemical care really matters for getting the most out of your money spent on your chemicals. I recently got about 32 rolls out of my chemicals, and they probably could have kept going, but I wanted to make this video and get some new chemicals going. So when we're talking about chemical care, there's 3 variables we need to pay attention to: air, light, and time. When we're talking about the light variable, we want to make sure we have tanks that are black or extremely dark. Some of those glass ones on Amazon, or you see people using, they have the brown discolored glass, but that's not the best. The best is just to get something black, no light gets to it, and store it in a cool, dark place that no light is going to be hitting these bottles. Number 2 is air. Air is one of the things that breaks down your developer. So getting an accordion style bottle, you'll fill this bottle up with liquid and then squeeze it down until the liquid is right at the top. Put your cap on tight so that no air gets out, and then you can preserve your chemicals. The last variable is time. In powder form, your chemicals could last probably years, but once you've created the liquid in the bottle, it's only gonna last maybe, if you're pushing it, 6 months. Some people say only a month or less, depending on how well you take care of your chemicals. Now, if you can take care of the other 2 variables, the air and the light, I think you can stretch your chemicals out pretty long. When I got my 32 rolls out of my last chemicals, I was taking care of my chemicals really well, and I was able to get about 3 or 4 months out of it, and it probably could have kept going. So chemical care is very important. One last little tidbit about this is you may not be able to dump your chemicals in your sink. Check with your local regulations to make sure that you can do that. The chemicals are pretty toxic and do pollute the environment. So if your water system isn't set up for handling stuff like that, check with your local regulations about that. Okay, I have 5 tips to help you develop film better at home. These are 5 tips that I had to scour the internet to learn how to do, and I'm gonna share them with you right now. Hack number 1, the 2% rule. By adding 2%, it extends the developing cycle and develops the film for a little bit longer as the developer degrades over time, or in one of our other variables, light or air. So the 2% rule is adding 2% per roll to your developing time every roll that you develop. So if you have 5 rolls that you've developed, it would be 10% 5% more time. So to do that, we take our original time of 3.5 minutes and we times that by 1.1 and equals, to break this up into minutes, we're going to remove the 3, which we know 3 minutes, and go 60 seconds times 0.85 to figure out how many seconds we need to go on our percentage. So we need to go for 3 minutes and 51 seconds after 5 rolls of film. So the 2% rule is pretty great and it definitely works. I definitely recommend trying it out and using it for yourself. Now, you might be wondering, well, what if that overexposes my film? A lot of films like to be overexposed, so there's really not that much harm in only going 2% over. Your numbers do get a little crazy when you start getting into 60%, when you're at like 30 and 35 rolls of film. But I have tried this method and it works really well, and I definitely recommend you try it too. It'll get you a lot more value out of your film developing kit. Hack number 2, photo flow. If you don't use photo flow, I don't know what you're doing. I ran into a problem a lot on my last step of developing. It would leave residue on there, especially if I was extending my chemical times and getting more rolls out of my developer. You definitely need something to rinse that water off. And photo flow is like a little touch of soap. It's not actually soap, but it adds something that helps the water sheet right off. It's 1 part per 200 milliliters of water. So 1 milliliter to 200 milliliters of water, distilled water. And what I do is after I finish developing, right before I hang it up, I do a quick rinse of that solution and it works every time. Hack number 3, buy more than one developing kit at a time. These are different ones, but definitely buy 2. Why? Because these last on the shelf for a long time in their dry stage, and they seem to keep going out of stock. I'm not sure if it was COVID, but I don't know. When you run out of chemicals, you need them, and having to order them and wait for them to ship to you, or them being out of stock, that's not a position you want to be in as a film photographer. So just buy 2, use 1, keep 1 in the backup. Always refresh the one that you have on the shelf. Hack number 4 is for our Patterson tank users and our 120 shooters. You can get 2 rolls on 1 reel of the Patterson tank, because this is actually designed to hold a 220, which is twice the length of your 120 film. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna put the film on the reel and roll the film onto the reel. Once it's on there, either with a gloved hand or maybe the side of your hand so you don't get so much fingerprints on it, you wanna move and twist that 120 roll until it's all the way to the end. Once it's all the way to the end, take your second roll, start rolling that one on, and you go right to the end and have a little bit off. There might be some overlap, but that overlap is never normally touching where your actual photos were. And sometimes they'll be connected together when you pull it out, but it's okay. Unless you mess it up, it's never gonna be overlapping on your film. Definitely try it once. Try to get the film all the way on there. This tip I was not able to find on the internet. There was only like 1 video of a guy doing it. Also, there's very few videos of people putting 120 film onto a reel. So what's up with that? I hope this video was able to help you. Okay, our last hack, hack number 5, is gonna be the film leader retriever. This thing was night and day for me. It's a little complicated to use, and I'll show you in just a second how to use it. It really cuts down on me trying to fiddle in the dark with loading my reels. So I definitely recommend this thing. You can pick it up for like 12 or 14 bucks. It's awesome. Okay team, our film is developed, hung up to dry. Let it dry for at least an hour so that it gets as dry as possible. You really want it to dry even longer so that it doesn't stick on your scanner and mess up your scan. Now I won't be discussing scanning in this video. I'll make another video about scanning and actually converting your negatives to positives. I like to use Negative Lab Pro, and I use a V600 scanner, and I'll talk all about that in another video, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching this crazy long video explaining all the little details. I hope it was helpful for you. I hope it served you well in learning how to develop film at home yourself. It's not that hard, it is intensive, but once you get to know it, you get to know how it rolls, then I think you'll do a great job yourself. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the little bell if you liked this content. If you want to see more from me, there's a lot more coming down the pipeline. And go follow me on Instagram at OneWillCobb and stay tuned for more videos.